Greetings, members, one and all of the Salivation Nation. We're going to talk about gold and the other yellow metal. Let's explore! Gold. Although its price has gone down a bit this year, we know that it is a long-term store of value and has proven itself over thousands of years. Why are so many people attracted to gold? Well, largely because of its physical properties. It does not react to the environment. It does not shift or change its form. In fact, you can bury a piece of gold into the ground and 1,000 years later dig it back up again, and it'll maintain the same properties. It'll maintain that same luster. The same cannot be said for this other yellow metal, although in this photo it looks more like a rock. Nonetheless, the other yellow metal is uranium, and it is indeed a metal, but it is a very volatile metal in terms of its physical properties. It's not something you want to hold in your hand unless you're wearing special gloves like this uranium. It is certainly a very interesting metal, and it radiates energy. In fact, that's what gold does not do, but it is a gold that you would not necessarily want to hedge against, but you may want to invest in the energy sector. Yes, indeed. And we're going to be talking about uranium in this video in terms of why it's so important, especially in terms of what's going on today in the geopolitical and economic backdrop that we are seeing right now. And we're going to talk about this in the sponsored video. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has precipitated an already fast accelerating global nuclear industry, as nations now must fast-track their pivots away from fossil fuels. Russia has made it impossible for foreign leaders to trust, which makes the U.S. in dire need of its own uranium production. Something unthinkable about a year or two ago happened. European lawmakers have approved a law designating nuclear as sustainable energy source as part of a system that was intended to influence direct investment in clean energy. Russia supplies almost 10% of the world's uranium, but it could cut off supply to the world's nations at any given moment. Russia and China fully leverage energy dominance in their geopolitical advantage. America is dangerously close to losing our uranium fuel industrial base. We are nearly completely dependent on foreign uranium imports. State-owned entities in Russia, Kazakhstan, and Uzbekistan are supplying almost half of the fuel used by America's reactor fleet. Nations that were previously dead set against nuclear energy proliferation are now leaning into nuclear-friendly initiatives. Finland has recently started up its first new reactor in over 40 years. The United Kingdom announced plans to increase nuclear capacity. France, which already depends on nuclear for over 70% of its electricity, said it would reverse plans to shut down older reactors and build another 6 new ones by 2050. The German Economic Ministry is considering extending its use of its 3 nuclear plants as public support for nuclear energy increases due to the current fuel shortages and the prospect of a permanent cutoff of Russian gas. And even the Netherlands plans to build at least 2 new reactors in the coming years. Meanwhile, in the United States, the difficulty of meeting clean energy goals and surging electricity demands are spurring a growing number of political leaders to take a fresh look at nuclear power. Now, clearly, the uranium market will benefit from big dollar government initiatives. The U.S. and other nations have no choice except to adapt nuclear power as a fuel source. More than 130 countries have now set or are considering a policy target of reducing emissions to net zero, including China, by 2060 and the U.S. by 2030. Experts predict that solar and wind can only meet around 70% of the world's energy demand, so there's a huge gap to fill. It's a dire scenario as the deficit is widening. As of 2020, global uranium mine production covered only 74% of world reactor requirements. Analysts expect the market deficit to continue through 2022. Meanwhile, the Financial Review states that the U.S.'s domestic uranium energy industry is limited to just one remaining commercial enrichment plant owned by Urenco in New Mexico. So virtually no U.S. uranium production despite operating the world's largest nuclear reactor fleet. We know that it generates power through fission, which is the process of splitting uranium atoms to produce energy. According to the Nuclear Energy Institute, the United States has avoided more than 471 million metric tons of carbon dioxide emissions in 2020. That's equivalent to removing 100 million cars from the road, or more than all other energy sources combined. Nuclear energy's land footprint is small. Despite producing massive amounts of carbon-free power, nuclear energy produces more electricity on less land than any other clean air source. To put it in perspective, let's just go down to the smallest level here when we think about nuclear energy. It's an extremely energy-dense source. One uranium pellet, which is about an inch tall, it equals about 17,000 cubic feet of natural gas, 120 gallons of oil, or 1 ton of coal. All of the used nuclear fuel produced in the U.S. nuclear energy industry over the last 60 years could fit on a football field at a depth of less than 10 yards. And we know with inflation where it is now that it is certainly important to think about where the sector is and what these commodities are going for nowadays. With inflation rising, it's only a matter of time before commodities in general will go up, and uranium certainly will follow. With Uranium Energy Corporation, this is a way to get exposure. It is the best way to get exposure into uranium. There's no other company in the uranium sector that has greater upside potential compared to its risk profile than the New York Stock Exchange listed Uranium Energy Corporation. In fact, their price target that they have, according to H.C. Wainwright and Company, is quite impressive. They list it as a buy because it wasn't long ago that it was trading at $2, and now it's up around $3, and their target for Uranium Energy Corporation is over $7. So yes, indeed, its valuation is great for the upside potential. It's the fastest growing 100% unhedged pure play uranium company. If you're a big bull on uranium, there really isn't any other company that comes close to UEC. It's like a leveraged US ETF of uranium, and I'm going to tell you why here in a moment. It's production-ready, low-cost ISR mining, which is the largest resource base of fully permitted ISR projects of any U.S.-based producer in terms of production. Had it chose to do so, it would overnight become the largest U.S. domestic producer of nuclear energy. So you can imagine what a trophy asset it is to own. It has a strong balance sheet, Uranium Energy Corporation has, of $182 million of cash and liquid assets, no debt, including 15 million shares of Uranium Royalty Corporation, the only uranium royalty company in the world. So here's a quite impressive measure here. They own physical uranium. They have a 5 million pound warehouse full of this metal. It's the largest inventory position for a U.S.-based uranium company. It is the holy grail for many mining investors. Uranium Energy Corporation actually has a physical position which is backed by the underlying commodity. So there's no other way for you to own the physical yourself apart from owning UEC shares. And by the way, you do not want to own physical uranium yourself, that's for sure. Let's talk a little bit about the shareholders that are involved. Among them are BlackRock, Vanguard Corporation, State Street, Fidelity, Northern Trust, UBS, CEF, Sprott, and others. So there is political support for uranium right now. I don't think there's a better time for this kind of bipartisan support here in the United States. All-time high with Democrats and Republicans, both in favor of nuclear energy. And the Biden administration wants congressional approval allowing the Department of Energy to purchase $4.3 billion of domestic uranium conversion and enrichment, and U.S. reliance on nuclear fuel from Russia and support a U.S. supply chain for existing and new advanced reactors. The $1.5 billion strategic uranium reserve would likely be rolled into the new program. There was an infrastructure bill signed into law that provides $6 billion nuclear credit programs for qualifying nuclear plants with priority given to reactors using uranium produced in the United States. The U.S. has set a goal to reach 100% carbon pollution-free electricity by 2035, and it's the second largest source of electricity, and it's the largest source of carbon-free power generation. There's an inventory overhang drawing down more rapidly than expected. It's an exciting time for nuclear, which is already providing electricity to 1 in 5 American homes and over half of our nation's carbon-free power. So with this backdrop, UEC took bold action to create America's largest uranium mining company with the acquisition of Uranium One from Russia State Atomic Energy Corporation. UEC, this is a U.S. corporation headquartered in Texas, is the largest uranium mining company amid a new era of domestic and global support for clean air and nuclear energy as an essential to the realization of a low-carbon global economy. The opportunity to acquire an advanced asset base of this quality from one of the global leaders in the nuclear energy sector is highly rare in the uranium sector anywhere in the world, let alone here in the United States. So at a time of unprecedented geopolitical events and risk, fully permitted and low-cost ISR projects in the United States will be critical and should carry a premium moving forward. And so this is where strategy with a company like Uranium Energy Corporation comes into play. And as is always the case, I would encourage you to do your own due diligence, but this is the best company to look at if you want to invest in uranium. I think as you do your research, you will find that to be the case on your own. But I would certainly encourage you to understand the risk of investing in a company like this, just as I would any other investment strategy for any company. To reach out to Uranium Energy Corporation, ask them questions. It certainly is something to consider here with Uranium Energy Corporation. So let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. I'd like to extend a multitude of gratitude to you all for taking the time to watch and encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.